Welcome to the November edition of the PD Lunch and Learn, featuring a presentation on additional dwelling units brought to you by members of the Building Division. Hold your questions till the end of the presentation, and then we will call on you to ask your questions personally, and we'll get some good responses from our team. Now I'd like to pass things over to Bob Nuttall, Manager of Building Inspections, to introduce the team.
Excellent. Thanks, Gord. Welcome, everybody. So again, Bob Nuttall, Manager of the Building Inspection team here in the Building Division. Thanks all for spending your lunch hour with us today. We're happy to be here and speak about what we know. So, and I just want to kind of extend a shout out to Sylvia Sadowski too for all the work her and Gord do in the background to set these lunch and learns up. I think they're vitally important for a lot of collaboration that happens around the city. So thank you. So today we've got a few subject matter experts to speak about additional dwelling units. I'm just here to do a bit of a lunch and learn. All the credit goes to Dave Bain and AJ, and they will introduce themselves in a minute here. Just very briefly, you might have heard additional dwelling units, the terminology used in the past, secondary dwelling units, single family conversions. So try to not to pay too much attention to the language, but we'll try to kind of clear those things up as we go through the presentation as well. So just a little bit of a high level. This year and last year alone, we're seeing well over 500 applications a year for conversion permits, turning single family dwellings into multiple units, and those are attached units. We're seeing even more, upwards of 50 or so applications per year for detached dwelling units, additional dwelling units. Those are some of the numbers. But really what we're here to discuss today is just kind of the narrower scope of what the Building Division does, our application processes, our review and inspection processes as they pertain to these additional dwelling units. So we will, without further ado, I guess I'll pass the floor over to AJ and Dave, and they will speak a little bit about these things, and we'll try to answer your questions as best we can. Thanks, AJ and Dave.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Bain. I am currently the acting supervisor of the Plan Examination section in the Building Division. I've been employed with the Building Division since 2001, and I have held the positions of Plans Examiner, Building Inspector, and Training Coordinator. AJ?
You're muted, AJ.
Sorry about that. I've been with the building department since 2004. I've been a plans examiner, building inspector, and am currently one of 4 supervisors of building inspections. Dave, you want to take care of this one?
Sure. Yeah. So in May of 2021, amendments were made to the city's zoning bylaws to permit additional dwelling units, which were commonly referred to as ADUs. They're formerly referred to as secondary dwelling units, or SDUs. Secondary suites is also another name we may have heard. While zoning bylaw requirements are an integral part of the process for allowing the creation of new ADUs, this presentation will focus specifically on the Building Division's role in the issuance and inspection of building permits for the ADUs.
So in June of 2023, the Building Division created a new ADU team. The goal of the team was to aid applicants wishing to create additional dwelling units, either internally within their existing dwellings or in a detached accessory structure on their property. At the current time, the Building Division's ADU team consists of 5 full-time plans examiners who handle all ADU applications. The dedicated team answers questions and inquiries in regards to in a timely manner, and this helps expedite the ADU building permit applications. In cases where, because the zoning bylaws do allow for conversion to up to 3 units within a dwelling, however, this presentation will address strictly the conversion to 2. Anything more than 2 is handled by our building engineering section and not our plan examination team. So there are two main types of ADUs. So this presentation is going to cover those two main types, one being an internal conversion, which could also be a purpose-built ADU, so where you've got 2 units within a single dwelling or a single building, and detached ADUs. So this is your typical basement conversion to an ADU. We have a fire separation delineated here, the left side with its own separate entrance, being the additional dwelling unit. The right side of the basement here being controlled by the owner, access to the upper levels. So again, they can look different, but this is pretty typical arrangement with an exterior below grade entrance. Second type of ADUs, which is newer for the city of Hamilton, is a detached additional dwelling unit, or ADU-D, which is a self-contained dwelling unit separate from the main dwelling unit on a lot. Detached ADUs may be newly constructed or can be created from the conversion of an existing accessory structure on a lot, such as a detached garage. So again, just for reference, here's a typical detached dwelling unit in the rear yard of an existing dwelling. There is requirements for setbacks and access to the unit, but again, those are all come from the zoning bylaw. We're going to focus more on the building and construction and inspection side of things. Dave?
Infill construction public notice bylaw, otherwise known as the Good Neighbor bylaw. Starting in April of 2022, the City of Hamilton's bylaw 21207 requires that residential infill construction and demolition sites or infill housing post a notice containing specific information about the project. This information notice is intended to improve communication with the public and what is taking place in their neighborhood, together with contact information. This bylaw applies to the creation of a detached ADU in a newly constructed building and the creation of an internal ADU where an addition to the existing dwelling greater than 100 square meters forms part of the construction.
So I think it's important to note that this bylaw was not created explicitly for ADU construction, but it does apply. The notices that you would see posted would be similar to what you see here. Address, contact information of the builder, permit number, elevations of what's being proposed, as well as building department contact information. This was originally created because we receive a lot of calls about what's happening with the information contained in this is all public record. But again, it does, by posting this information, it allows residents to contact the builder directly if they have issues with garbage, things like that, and it can help lighten the load for city, for bylaw, for building. Again, this bylaw only applies to a small number of ADUs, but we are getting more of these detached ADUs, so this will become more prevalent. Builders who want to construct an ADU. ADUs that are created through internal conversion or through an addition to an existing dwelling or an existing accessory structure are not considered new dwellings by Tarion, and as such, those contractors, they are required to have a City of Hamilton trade license. Construction of a new detached ADU, so a completely new building, not a conversion of an existing building, that requires a builder to be registered with Tarion. The trades that work on that building may require a Hamilton trade license, depending on what trade they're in. And in both cases, there are exceptions when the work is being carried out by the homeowner. So in the cases of investors or things like that, where they're hiring everybody, the people they're hiring need to be, they will have to have either a City of Hamilton trade license or be a Tarion builder, depending on the type of ADU they are constructing. The City of Hamilton trade license, that is something our inspectors actively ask for on site during their inspections. There we go. The Ontario Building. So again, we are the building division. This is what we deal with, is the Ontario Building Code. It's important to note that the Ontario Building Code sets out minimum construction standards for how to build ADUs. Homeowners may wish to build beyond minimum code requirements. Building beyond the code provides homeowners many advantages, including greater occupant comfort and amenities that can make their ADU a nicer place to live. But again, it is important to note that building code is a minimum set of standards. This is especially important when dealing with conversion of an existing building to contain an ADU. The building code allows for several reductions in requirements. So while somebody may think something is incorrect or less than ideal, it can still be code compliant. That doesn't mean it's built the best it could be, but it can still be code compliant. And that is something that we deal with a lot. Tenant complaints about things like insufficient insulation or things like that, or low headroom, but there are reductions in the code when converting existing dwellings to contain ADUs. So that's really important to note. Doesn't mean it's a free-for-all, but there are reductions over something that would be being built brand new, start to finish, as a new building. Dave?
So the Ontario Building Code requirements can vary with the age of the dwelling or accessory structure, as AJ just mentioned, as well as the location of the building on the property. In most cases, designs for ADUs can be done by a homeowner. However, the Ontario Building Code requirements and permit submission expectations are the same whether the drawings are prepared by a homeowner or a professional or qualified designer.
Okay, so I think it's important to note that, again, the building code does allow for a homeowner to do their own drawings. Now that can be especially difficult when we're looking at conversions of existing buildings. The homeowners, again, they don't necessarily know what the code requirements are. They Google some stuff on the internet. They have just enough to be dangerous. But when we are reviewing permits, we're going to and doing our inspections. It's irrelevant who does the drawings. The code requirements remain the same. While we can insist, we would always recommend that a homeowner hire a professional designer to prepare plans when submitting for any type of building permit, but especially an ADU, where we've got, in most cases, we're dealing with existing construction and new construction trying to mesh together. So typical things that we would look for during the plans review and as well as the inspections. We're going to be looking for minimum room sizes and minimum floor areas for the unit as a whole, and as well as specific room types. We're going to look for minimum ceiling heights. Again, especially important in the internal conversions, both where we're converting a basement into a unit or an attic to a unit. Headroom can become a major issue. Again, the fact that zoning allows for these pretty well throughout the city now doesn't give everyone the right to say, yes, I have a basement, I can convert it. You still need to meet minimum code requirements. We're going to be looking at window sizes and locations. Again, certain types of rooms require certain windows, whether it's for natural lighting or for egress purposes. We're also going to look at exiting requirements. As you can see in the photo here, we've got a newly constructed below grade entrance to a unit. There are code requirements that allow access to newly created units through the existing unit, the existing dwelling, through shared access, or we can also have common areas such as common vestibules, common entrances that are separated from the remainder of the building as well. Plumbing requirements. Now this is a big one for us because just not to the building code, the way the building code is worded, there are different requirements for a single family dwelling versus a dwelling that is converted to contain 2 dwelling units. So a house that may have a 3/4 inch water service, which may be fine if it's used as a single family dwelling. Once that's being proposed to be converted to a 2-family, they may be required to upgrade that service. So that does involve some coordination between both the building division and Hamilton Water. They may need to have the service upgraded. The building code requires it to be upgraded on the private side, but again, in no sense in upgrading only the private side. So if they're looking to upgrade the public side, they would need to engage Hamilton Water to increase that as well, to have the whole service replaced. We also, another big thing when we're looking at the internal is which the photo here shows. I'm not sure if you can all see that. Excuse me, but separate shutoffs for the individual units. So again, if we have work to be done, we don't have to shut it off the entire building. We can identify each individual unit within the building. A couple other things we're going to be looking at here. Smoke and carbon monoxide detection. That first photo on the left would be an induct smoke detector. So that's going to look in the case of a fire and that gets into your ducts, it's going to shut off the furnace. So again, this helps when we've got multiple units, notifies people in the other units. It shuts that furnace off so we're not spreading it throughout the house. And on the right, we have our typical interconnected smoke alarm with strobe light. Now, in most cases, where we're talking conversion, those detectors will end up being interconnected between units. So if it's triggered in one of the units, it will go off in both units. We're going to be looking at HVAC and fire separations as well. Big part of what we do. This is also a big part of, excuse me, where some of the exceptions come in for the existing buildings. A lot of those exceptions revolve around reduced fire separations between units, provided other things are done, such as induct smoke alarms, interconnected smoke alarms. But as you can see here, the red line indicates the fire separation. So again, it goes up and around the ductwork, and the ductwork is wholly contained within the lower unit. One of the last things that the code requires when we have multiple units, but in most cases does not apply to conversions of ADUs, is sound transmission between units. All right, I got a real bad cough today here. So while we don't look for in the conversion of an existing dwelling to a new ADU, we don't look for any kind of sound transmission, sound dampening requirements between units. It's always acceptable to construct beyond the minimum code requirements. So a wall or ceiling that's built to meet the minimum requirements set out in Part 9 of the code will have some sound attenuation. But again, because of the reductions allowed under Part 11 and under 940, sometimes this is not the case. It is one of the most common complaints we get after the fact is noise between units. Unfortunately, again, while better building practice would be to add some sound dampening measures, the building division does not have the authority to make them do that. The only exception, again, is in the case of a brand new purpose-built dwelling that contains 2 dwelling units. Dave?
So next steps in moving forward with the building division. We are currently developing an additional dwelling unit website for the public to use. On there will be links to a property. If you select a property, the link will pull up the bylaw specifically for the ADUs that you can research to determine compliance for zoning purposes. We are developing brochures for the general public just to give an overview similar to what we've done here today of certain items that are reviewed, that are required in order to convert your unit into an additional dwelling unit or a detached additional dwelling unit. We've provided a dedicated phone extension for the ADU team, as well as an ADU team email address, so that customers can inquire directly with the ADU team. They are more of a subject matter expert into the field, so we feel that will be better suited to answer your inquiries. We've reached out to community groups and advised them of our new additional dwelling unit team. Developing plan review and inspection guides for staff to ensure consistency in applying the Ontario Building Code requirements for plan review and for inspection purposes. And the possible additional members being added to a team from a building inspection section and our building engineering sections to address the questions and comments that we'd be receiving for the applications for more than 2 dwelling units, as AJ had mentioned earlier, that this presentation is focusing on.
I might just chime in for a quick second. Thank you, AJ and Dave. So just for everybody's benefit, ADUs aren't something new. They're not something new to Hamilton. They're not something new to the building code. Buildings have been able to be converted long before any of the bylaw changes in Hamilton. It still relies on the fact that zoning permits that particular use, and it was permitted in various areas prior to some of these bylaws coming into effect. The building code hasn't changed much with respect to ADUs. It's simply following the process of applying for the permits, confirming building code compliance. So ADUs are not something new to us. I think it's the influx in the amount of development of this type that has kind of tweaked some of our processes a little bit to hopefully streamline the application review and inspection processes, develop those consistencies as Dave mentioned and AJ mentioned. And that's really the intent of what we're trying to do with the ADU teams here in the building department. So that's it from me. So again, thank you, Dave. Thank you, AJ. I guess we'll open the floor to any questions anybody may have.
I think I saw Sue raised her hand. I'm not seeing them, but yeah, if you go ahead, Sue.
Great, thank you, Gord. Thanks for this presentation, very informative. Sue Remack, I'm with the Business Development Division with the city. I just have some questions regarding these trade licenses. And so as I'm looking at it was mentioned that City of Hamilton trade licenses are required. So if I can just give you a scenario, because I did notice there's an exemption as well, but if someone hires someone, a general contractor, to do an additional unit, and that GC hires, a plumber, electrician, a framer, etc. Do each of them have to have a trade license, even if, they have engineered plans and what have you? Do each of them have to have a trade license issued by the city?
So I'll take that question. Yeah, so the short answer is yes. Each contractor holding themselves out to account, whether they're soliciting, actually doing the construction, advertising that they do construction in Hamilton, would be required to be licensed trades for the particular trade that they're doing. So the general contractor would require the building repair trade license. Plumber would require the plumber's license. An HVAC person would require an HVAC license. So there are different, I guess, licenses applicable to each respective trade. So there are, as you mentioned, and as it was mentioned in the presentation, there are some exemptions to those rules. So if the homeowner's doing their own work, there are some exemptions currently in the trade license bylaw that speak to where the project is designed and reviewed by a professional engineer. So if the drawings are done by a professional engineer, the project is also reviewed by a professional engineer. In those circumstances, a trade person may be exempt from needing to get that license.
So, sorry, just to follow up on that. So if I wanted to do this and I had an engineer draw it up, but I do need some plumbing done in there, and I'm going to hire a plumber. I mean, in order to get the permits, like, do I have to hire a plumber? I certainly wouldn't want to do it myself, but if I hire a plumber, then they don't have to have the license from the city?
So yes, correct. If the drawings are designed by a professional engineer,
yeah,
they are committing to review the project, your plumber does not need to be licensed. So you don't need any licensed contractors to apply for a permit. So we don't necessarily need to know that you have licensed people as you go through the application process. It's always good to know for yourself, because they're going to be the ones doing the work. But yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And then, sorry, just two quick ones. It talks about writing an exam. Who has to write the exam, and what are the fees for this license?
So it would be the contractor that has to write the exam. There are different stages of qualifications for the license. So there would be, you just hold the contractor's license, or are you the master? So a master license can oversee plumbers that may not be licensed for their company.
Okay.
So it depends. It really, the short answer again is it depends on who's doing the work. And the fees, better question probably for my colleagues in licensing and bylaw services, but I think the initial application fee that covers, all the criminal background checks and the photo IDs and the administrative processes to write the exam. I want to say it's in the realm of $300 or $400, $500 at the most.
Sure.
That's what that expense is, and I think it's renewed every 3 years or something.
It says annually.
That could be.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks
Okay.
for taking my questions.
Sylvia, did you see any more hands?
Yeah, I'm seeing Zipco has a question, and after that we have Liam. Go ahead, Zipco.
Thank you, Sylvia. Bob, thank you for this presentation. This is we are in development engineering approval section. We are receiving a lot of inquiry, especially when it comes to the servicing of the detached second dwelling unit. You know, AJ Clark, AJ touched a little bit on the servicing when it comes to the kind of water connection to the second dwelling unit. Looks like that is more. That example was more for a second dwelling unit within the existing building. But what about, do we have some kind of criteria for servicing of the detached second dwelling unit? You guys, you made reference to the OBC, but usually OBC covers just a building and about 1 meter around the perimeter of the property. The rest would be subject to compliance with the City of Hamilton sewer and water bylaws, I guess, correct? And who's going to inspect that section? I'm not sure that Hamilton Water is going to inspect those services. Also, our city inspectors for single residential developments usually are not going on site. They're not issuing the servicing permit. How this issue is going to be addressed? Thank you.
Yeah, great questions, Zipco. Thank you for that. Dave, I don't know, do you want to, I can answer it unless you want to take it.
Yeah, so currently we're it's all covered under the building permit. If they're servicing the secondary dwelling unit from the existing house, that's covered under the building permit. I know there was, I believe, some recent changes to the water and sewer use bylaw that does not permit separate services to the detached dwelling units. So previously to that, there was the option for the owner to run a separate service, still being inspected by the building division from the property line in. But now the separate service is not permitted, from my understanding, with the new sewer and water use bylaw. Therefore, it's all covered under the building permit. From the building, they can either go in through the house and through the plumbing, existing plumbing that is part of the house, or they can run it along the side of the house and tie it in front of the dwelling. Bob, I don't know if you have anything else to add from an inspection point of view.
Yeah, so I think as part of the building permit application process, we would review the proposed development. So we would be counting fixtures, we would be doing all things necessary to properly and adequately size what's required for plumbing services in the building based on number of fixtures, number of room counts, things like that that are identified under the building code. So as a result of that, if there is a need to increase the water service line, it does trigger some other processes, and that will usually involve collaboration with Hamilton Water. Sometimes your teams of go in growth management with respect to road cut permits, and so we do touch on other departments as well through those kind of internal channels and processes. And it has been a topic of conversation floating around for many years, since before I joined the city, about how we address water permits. So there's been a lot of high-level discussions this year as we look to try to clarify some of those processes with respect to strictly servicing permits. So I appreciate that question, and it is on our radar for trying to streamline that process as well.
Thank you, Bob.
Liam, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Liam.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Liam with zoning. Yeah, I actually just had a question that probably I feel like I know the answer to, but I thought I'd ask anyways. Is there any difference in the building code between a secondary dwelling unit and a converted dwelling unit? I know the terminology is kind of technical, as like especially in terms of zoning, where converted dwelling unit is not the same as a secondary dwelling unit. So I was just curious to know if there was also building code requirements that like was similar to that, particularly because I have had someone come and ask a question about their particular conversion of their existing dwelling to be two-family, and there was a code that they couldn't meet, so they were wondering if they converted it using the SDU regulations. Does the building code look at it different? I had assumed that it doesn't because they're both dwelling units regardless, so the building code would look at it that way. But I couldn't confirm for them because I'm not as well versed in the building code. So I'm just curious.
Right. So you'd be correct in the, concluding that it was not any different. Under the building code, 2 units within a building or a house is defined under the building code as a house. So it permits up to 2 dwelling units in the one building.
Okay, thanks.
And so the requirements for the building code wouldn't, the requirements for ADUs are no different than what the building code would stipulate. There's nothing in our ADU guides or processes that would differ from what's the regulations are in the building code.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of what I figured.
Yeah.
They were just, I guess, trying to look for an alternative to their situation, but yeah, okay.
Gotcha. And so I know AJ and Dave both touched on it. Part 11 of the building code is basically the renovation section of the code. So it does allow for some reductions in performance for particular things. You can have reduced fire separation ratings. You can have less stringent exiting requirements. So there are some things that aren't so restrictive as if you were to be building a brand new building. And that's typically the section that a professional and qualified designer would be referring to as they're looking to renovate or convert an existing single family dwelling into multiple units, whether it's 2 or 3 or more. So that's why it's so important to have good professionals involved with the development process so that they're aware of some of those, I don't want to say cheats, but the kind of workarounds for some things that aren't so easy to do when it's impracticable to kind of achieve a specific thing without tearing down complete wall or floor or ceiling assemblies.
Right. Thanks.
Thanks for your question, Liam. Next, we have Munir, and then after that, we have Darlene. Munir, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Sylvia. So I think my question is, I'm not sure how many the ADU or we approve or will be approving in future, but question regarding the system capacity. As you know, nowadays we receive a lot of the applications for intensification high-rise building, and we're getting a pushback from Hamilton Order with respect to the capacity. So my question to the team, how we're handling these ADU if is needed desperately in the city, and how they're getting approval without understanding the system capacity within the road or offsite. So is there will there be any requirements on that, or because people may ask, so we'll be allowing them ADUs that will increase the loading in the system, whereas the through the site plan and other people, they are on hold.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point and great question, Munir. I think internally with our processes, there's really not much in the way of flagging it to other departments for consideration, Public Works in this case, or your team. just with respect to servicing. I know there are some flags with respect to getting permits for the applicable laterals, so sewer laterals that might be incumbent of upgrades or kind of relining sewers where, you know, that would have to be done in conjunction with the development of an SDU or, sorry, an ADU or any other conversion. To be quite honest, I'm not sure how Public Works is addressing that with respect to the overall infrastructure of the city. Great point for actually me to bring back to our senior management team to figure out whether or not that's a topic of discussion at the SLT level, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Manir. Darlene, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
Hi, Starlene Cole, Acting Real Estate Manager in the city's CREO office. I'm just wondering how parking is being addressed. I know that most residential units have space for 1 or 2 cars, but is there a minimum parking requirement when there's an additional unit? And if not, then how is that going to be managed?
Another good question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so when the bylaw was passed, and again, this is the building division on just reviewing and issuing building permits. We don't have any involvement in the creation of the bylaw, but when the bylaw was passed, it was passed with buildings that were existing prior to May of 2021. No additional parking was required to create these additional dwelling units. So I don't know if it was circulated at that time on looking into the parking requirements, but from the building perspectives role in this and issuing building permits, we have the bylaws to say that no additional parking would be required for those existing dwellings, adding the ADU.
Thank you for taking my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gord, it looks like those are all of our questions. Oh, no, I see another one that came in from Randy. Randy, you can go ahead.
Can you guys hear me okay, or is there an echo?
We can hear you okay.
Okay, so what's the difference between duplex and an ADU?
So again, that would be a zoning question, but there's 2 families and two dwelling units in a duplex, and there would be 2 dwelling units in a single family dwelling with an ADU. So someone from zoning, maybe for their terminology and interpretations, may be able to provide a better answer to that, and if they have an interpretation on a duplex, but generally speaking, they both contain 2 dwelling units.
I guess.
Hey, yeah, I can speak to that. It's Liam here.
Perfect. Thanks, Liam.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, there's been a lot of, I guess, ambiguity between the two. Technically, an ADU in zoning terms isn't permitted in a duplex. So you can have it in a single family dwelling, semi-detached and townhouse dwelling. The duplex is not considered in that permission. And basically a duplex, because it's divided horizontally, unlike a semi-detached where that's divided vertically. The intent, I guess, behind a duplex, they function the same way, but they just have different classifications. So I mean, as we just discussed, I don't think there's any different building code requirements as far as firewall, except for those few that are under, I guess it was section 11 that you mentioned, being a little less stringent, but they function the same way, but zoning wise, the intent of a secondary dwelling unit or ADU is more to be, I guess, accessory to that primary dwelling. Now there's nothing in the zoning that means that that accessory dwelling unit needs to be bigger or smaller than the primary unit, but there are some requirements that, you know, you can only have so many habitable rooms, and it kind of funnels it to be a certain size, whereas an ADU, a duplex is kind of just like as built additional dwelling unit, I guess. But yeah, it's more just a technical terminology than anything really.
Appreciate that.
Great. I'm just looking for any more questions. I don't see. Munir, is that an old hand or is that a new hand?
Sorry, I think it is old hand. Sorry.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So Gord, I'm going to pass it back over to you. It looks like those are all our questions.
Great. Yeah, I just want to thank our presenters for a brilliant presentation, as well as the Employee Engagement Committee who has put this together. We have a few exciting things coming up in the new year. So just watch your inbox, watch for the PED stuff, and those will be in there. And also, if you have any ideas, if you guys have any exciting projects that you're working on that you'd like to share, please pass that along to your EEC rep. And I just want to thank everybody for spending their lunch with us, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks. This
everybody.
was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Take care.
Thank you.